I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Sebastian City Planning and Zoning Commission, October 4th, 2018. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Here.
Ms. Cottenberg.
Here.
Mr. Carter.
Present.
Mr. Reyes is not present.
We don't have,
Mr. Amati.
excuse me, speaker's not working. Microphones are not working.
I'm sorry?
The microphones are not working.
He heard. He's gonna get him on.
Okay, but all right. Sorry.
Mr. Amati is
Not here.
present. Mr. Kizilbosh.
Here.
Mr. Eugen.
Here.
Mr. Alvarez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no announcements tonight. You've all had an opportunity to review the minutes from the meeting, our last meeting of July 19th, 2018. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I saw none.
Hearing none,
None.
I will entertain.
I'll make a motion that we accept and approve the minutes as submitted for the July 19th, 2018 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah. Aye. Yeah.
Aye.
And no opposed? So be it. Okay. Okay, we have no quasi-judicial this evening. No unfinished business. We have no public, so we have no public input. New business. The
Sharon,
petitioner
it appears the
is,
applicant isn't here. He was aware that he was going to have to make a presentation. I don't mind if we'd like to switch item B and A to give him a little time if he's running late, but if he is, after that item B discussion, if he's not here, then I would ask that we continue it or table it. I'll ask him to come at our next meeting.
okay. Does anybody have an objection to that?
No.
Well, they must have got an agenda which say Concha Drive, so maybe they're thinking that's not them.
Pardon me?
We have Warren Street, so the addendum, the agenda is wrong, I think. It's a Concha Drive or Warren Street?
It's it's 480 Concha Drive.
We don't have any package for that.
Then the
Says Warren Street.
pictures.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We have Warren Street.
Warren Street.
We have, yeah, Warren Street.
Maybe that's a confusion with them.
I know that the garage size is correct and the name on the applicant.
According to the survey, it's Warren.
You got two of them. Service is Colleen Angelo, owner.
I apologize. It appears that what's on the agenda is wrong, the 480 Contra Drive. What you have in your packet and all that information is correct. And the contractor did come in last week, though, and I did tell him that he had to come, he would be here on Thursday.
So maybe the
So somebody,
contractor
it looks like somebody's coming in, so
Okay.
I apologize that the agenda is incorrect, but the packet material is.
Okay. Would this be our
Somebody coming
applicant?
in. He might be here.
That's not the contractor I'd work with, but he may be the homeowner or representing. I'll wait till I have a seat.
Guess not.
Madam Chair,
what I would suggest is, let's go ahead and, handle item B.
Yes, that's
If
what we're
somebody
doing.
shows up, at
That-
that point, what I would ask you to do is, we're gonna have to amend the agenda to get that corrected, but if nobody shows up,
We don't need
no
to.
amendments necessary, because we probably won't entertain any of the information, so. But B, we do need to do, so.
Okay,
if we
thank
could
you.
do that First.
We will begin our discussion for item B, Land Development Code Amendment regarding walls and fences.
Commissioners, this came about, we've had, as noted in our memorandum, the last few years, we've had more than at least 4 or 5, if not more, variance applications to go before the Board of Adjustment / City Council for relief of the height of the fence that's allowed in code, 6 feet. I believe all of those variances were granted. They were looked at as a case-by-case for each individual lot. But council did say with that many variances that usually that's an indication that we need to look at the code. Is it something that we do want to change or amend? And of course, when we're looking at one item within a section, it's always a good time then to look at the whole section itself to see if there's any updating or revisions and modernizations that we'd like to do for that. So staff has given you a copy of the section in question, the walls and fences. Staff initially had looked through some of the areas that we thought may need some changing or clarification, better definitions, and a couple of other items that we'd like to discuss with you. Going through in order through the code is the height measurement determination. The code currently states is how we measure is we take an 8-foot run underneath the fence, and the highest point of that is where you measure that 6 feet. I don't know if that was a standard or if that's works the most. Of course, that's going with a parallel line running underneath the fence, not necessarily perpendicular where you may have a slope or a rise next to it. It is suggested to possibly look at that we just go ahead and allow 8-foot fences throughout the Highlands, or staff considered, and as to step back a bit, for a while there we were getting a lot of variances. The code requires septic tanks to be in your front yard and your wells to be in your backyard. And at a time, though, based on some of the older homes where those were placed, people were needing to get variances. There may be something unique about the lot itself. There was quite a few variances on that. And so that also went before to change the code. And what they did is made them administrative variances. And the code is set up, and that's the section that we refer to in there, that if you meet this and this and this, staff can grant you an administrative variance. And that is one other thing to consider regarding the 8-foot fences, that we would still look at each case at an individual lot, but it wouldn't have to formally go before the Board of Adjustment. And we certainly could come up with a 2 or 3 criteria that says if you meet this, you would be allowed an 8-foot fence, and staff could grant that administratively. The instance where that kind of came up, or where we may still want to go on a case-by-case basis, is one of our last fence variances, which was granted, but the code also states that your 6-foot fence, hence an 8-foot fence, can start even with your house line, and then the request was for the side and the rear for an 8-foot fence. They were the closest to the road. They were at 25 feet. Their 8-foot fence could have started at 25 feet back to their rear line. The neighbor next to them, their house had been built back farther, almost about 40 feet. And so when that neighbor would walk out their front door, in their front yard, there would be about a 15-foot run of this 8-foot fence. And we felt that that would not be okay for them. That would be something, not that I would want to look at either, something that was an 8-foot fence. And so we put a condition on that variance that 8-foot fence started even with their property and then went back. And the property owner was okay with that. So there were some of these individual cases and situations that we felt that we could still look at if that is also the way you would want to go, or we could just grant that the maximum height that Sebastian recommend is 8 feet. So that was the main reason why this was coming before you. We also wanted to clear up, we really hate the definition of the secondary front yard and where a fence could be in there. It's very confusing. We had to kind of come up with diagrams and policies on how we had looked at that. Basically, the setback on a secondary front yard is 20 feet, and so you can have a 6-foot fence at that setback line back towards your house and to your rear property. We have quite a bit of corner lot property owners that are really upset with that because it really takes away from their backyard. They're already on two front yards, and then they're restricted with where they can put a 6-foot fence on their secondary front yard. Something that staff would like to suggest for a discussion is possibly moving that to 10 feet. We don't want to get too much closer to their secondary front property line because it may be a visibility hazard for that intersection there. But that would give a little bit relief and something else we wanted to throw out for discussion. Also, too, if we do grant an 8-foot fence through either administrative variance or a straight change to the code, how do we want to address those that have 6-foot fences and would like to add maybe a 2-foot top to their fences? You know, add some language into the code that would allow that for those that already have 6-foot fences that, again, would like to, based on their situation. Also, one other thing that we had looked into and discussed with the city manager is the current policy on when you put a fence in your easements. You have side yard easements and your rear easement. The property owner signs an affidavit that states, I'm aware that I'm putting this fence in an easement and I may have to remove it if any of the entities that have the right to use that. It's just kind of put with the permit and filed. We're going to request that that gets recorded. That way it is comes up as an encumbrance on a title search, and future owners know that they may have to take down that fence if there's a new ditch that goes in the backyard or something like that. So we wanted to add some, I think in that one section, to just add that word recorded affidavit of easement. So we'd like to get your feelings, and we have already advertised for the public hearing for our next P&Z meeting on the 18th, and we'll have a ordinance with the strikeout and addition version to that. But before we sat down and did that and brought it to you, we kind of wanted to get your direction on what you'd like to see, some of the changes in that code, and we'll implement that into an ordinance. I don't know how you want to start the discussion, if individually, or if we wanted to go item by item, or your general overview on anything that you see that you'd like amended.
I think that our applicant has just arrived, and I would like to suspend this discussion until we've had that application presentation. Does anybody object to that?
No.
No, I mean, this is gonna take longer.
Okay. And we're going to move back. We're going to suspend discussion on item B until after the application has made the applicant has made his presentation. We're going to go back to item A, accessory structure review, which should read 409 Warren Street.
Actually, Madam Chair, I think you need to entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
Thank you.
And go ahead and add the item of approval of the 821 square foot attached garage at 409 Warren Street, which is lots 2 and 3, block 77 in Sebastian Highlands, Unit 2. Add that item to the agenda, and then we'll strike the other one.
Thank you. Would somebody make that motion, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we amend the agenda to read project location 409 Warren Street, lots 2 and 3, block 77, Sebastian Highlands, unit number 2, and delete accessory structure review at 480 Concha Drive, 988 square foot detached garage, M.M. Joseph Harrison.
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. Could we have the presentation from the applicant, please?
Board members. I'm Clay Wick on behalf of Thompson's Remodeling and the owner, Colleen D'Angelo, who owns the property at 409 Warren Street. And we'd like to give a presentation on what we're trying to do is just additional storage, which would be on the north side of her property. The property presently faces east and west. west being the front entry or the front, the house. And with the addition of the structure, will certainly improve the landscaping and follow every guidelines set forth by the board. That has no problems or bearings on that. The additional structure is going to primarily be used for storage. I know it's an addition with that. And then also along the front face of it, we're proposing a new covered porch area, extending that out. The applicant previously has, unbeknownst to me and when we first started the bidding process and everything else, we were in for an abandonment of easement, which we thought had been taken care of, and since now has. So now we're in front of the board asking your approval of the project.
Okay. Staff?
And to clarify with the application, staff did check, the original house was built without a garage. And at some point down the road, there was a single-car garage added on the other side. We are looking at that garage as the required one-car garage per the zoning district. And so we are not including that in the accessory structure total. And so, it is just, this 821 square feet is just the attached garage. It does not include the porch in front. That would just be a building addition. But that is why the other garage was not taken. And as I understand, they're still going to use the other single-car garage as storage also.
That is correct,
Yes.
yes.
So it's not going to be it could, but if they turned it into a bedroom or the building addition, but they are, at this point, using it as storage also.
As storage currently, and that's going forward for our scope of work, is just doing the addition. I know if she wanted to move forward in the future, we'll obviously come in with a new permit, a new application, everything else to do such.
Our zoning technician did process the application for the abandonment of easement. That has been taken care of. And also the vacant lot was, they had hired somebody to review it for gopher tortoises. And as you can see, as included in your packet, there is a gopher tortoise located on the vacant lot. It is within the Fish and Wildlife's mandated distance from Concord, so they do not have to get a permit to relocate that gopher tortoise, but they have suggested the silt fencing and the protection for that gopher burrow under protection. And I know Thompson Remodeling had stated that they will definitely have that in place as the construction takes place. We also had talked about, it was not in time to get it into your packet, but we had gone over a landscape plan. They do have two fairly large specimen trees behind the house, which we actually figured out to be 7 tree credits. So they will need an additional 8 trees to come up with the 15 that's required. And they have also reviewed and agreed with our calculation of the 15 hedge plants that should be planted near around where available on the new accessory structure. So we have added a final planning and zoning inspection to their permit, and staff will verify that that landscaping is implemented before there's a certificate of completion. Staff recommends approval of this. They certainly are going to make it look to match the house with the porch addition, and it meets all the requirements of the code. Staff recommends approval.
Ms. Bob, was that 8 additional trees you said and 15 foundation plantings?
Yes.
Any of the commission members have any questions? Yes, sir.
I have one question. You said it's primarily built for storage. What sort of storage? Not commercial or?
No, sir. No intent for commercial at all. Strictly residential. It's a single-car garage, which she has now.
Right.
And with her stuff, from gaining knowledge that I've known and talking with the owner, it's just she's moved down and had a whole bunch of storage up north when she sold her house and everything else, as most of them do. Coming to a small square footage, that's what she wants to do. It's not going to be a commercial application or a home business run out of the home at all.
Okay, because I noticed the size of the garage was not much smaller than the house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And her main intent is to gain the extra storage, but more so, she's looking for curb appeal. You know, the house at presently time, you can tell it's been dated. And she wants to add the porch to kind of tie it all together and bring that curb appeal back.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Where the garage is going to attach to the house, is there gonna be a separate wall there, or are you gonna use the wall of the house as part of the?
Yes, sir. Our intent is right now is to use that same line as the wall that's currently there in the front wall and continue that onto the garage. So there's no deception or projected towards the road in any way at all.
Okay, so the house wall will be will be a wall for the storage area then?
That is correct, yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Now, the plan shows it's a separate wall. It's not attached to the house. It's attached to the house, but it's a separate block wall.
Correct, yes. The block, if I was answered the question correctly, it's going to be a flat wall across the front. It's not going to project out, being a separate wall. We're going to attach to that same corner and then just extend it basically out and then back to the east of the property.
Because the existing structure is the manufacturer's homes, it won't take the load of the new thing there.
That's correct.
Okay.
We're following the engineer's recommendations as far as the attachments to that. Basically, we're building a monolithic slab at pretty much at grade now. We may have to bring it up just a little bit or down just a little bit. Monolithic slab, bringing it up so the same roof line will then continue on through, not, giving it two different elevations.
The other question I have, there's two windows there coming from the bedroom. So you'll be closing those windows?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And is there an existing window, which is one is in the front, hopefully there's one in the back in the master bedroom, that should meet the egress code?
Yes, sir. Everything.
I looked at the house, those windows are very small.
Yes, sir. And unfortunately, the means of egress at the time the house was built, we don't have to meet that with this project due to the fact of the location of the existing door and everything else. I understand what you're saying. If we were doing so much more percentage of the building, then we would have to meet today's codes of the means of egress.
And there's the one tree, oak tree, I think you're definitely saving that thing, right?
Yes.
Very close to the house.
Yes, sir. Everything in the back of the house, especially the two live oaks that we referred to earlier, our intent is not to touch those at all, anything at all. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do is there's an existing wood fence that's there that is to the west going towards the front of the property on the side of the house. We're going to remove that only to that section to allow us to do our tie-in to the back. And then the existing fence on the, on the north side that it would connect, that would stay in place but then tie into the new structure.
Okay, all right. That's it. I don't know.
Any other questions?
On the,
No, I'm fine.
I'm sorry. On the electrical, I'm looking on here, I can't see, what is the voltage for the garage? Is it going to be 110 or 220?
Yes, sir, 110. There's no washer dryers or anything of that of 220 needed. Just a simple garage door opener and simple lights in the garage.
Okay. I didn't see it's maybe here, but again, I couldn't find it. Where the two roof lines come together, well, that obviously will have to meet hurricane standards, but you're saying there is not a separate soldier wall next to the house wall?
The existing wall now we're talking about the north side of the property is actually a gable.
Correct.
On that gable, we're actually reinforcing the gable end to meet today's standards and today's codes for the gable wall building. And then when we attach to that, there'll be a new hip that comes out to the north, and then the new ridge will run east and west. So basically it gives it a T look from an elevated perspective.
Well, it'll help the appearance of the house, that's for sure, with
Yes,
that.
sir.
The gable end facing the street. There is an electrical pole in the back. Will that have to be moved at all?
No, sir. Existing service to the house is sufficient to sustain this, so we don't have to do a service change or electrical change of anything. We have enough room in the panel that we can simply add the required outlets and breakers and everything to today's codes, which will be an actual separate arc fault breaker, because it is now a garage with the exterior outlets and stuff like that. So they'll be updating all the way throughout the project, but to answer your question, no, sir. We don't have to do anything with
But physically, the pole won't have to be moved. I couldn't tell from the street behind.
That's correct. We don't have to do anything
Okay.
to the pole or move the pole at all.
And this is served by septic,
Yes, correct. Yes, sir.
and that's what's shown in the front.
And that's what's up front, presently in the front yard of the structure.
And the exterior will be uniform with the current house?
Correct. The current house is a stucco finish, and we plan on, matching that same stucco finish throughout the front, side, and back.
Chairman Roth, and I just want to clarify for the record also, because it was on my list of questions too. Staff will always give you a copy of the house, that file that we have with the building department, and on the last sheet, it does show that the original house had some sort of siding on it, T111, or it was vertical siding, horizontal siding. So I did want to verify, because that does not show that it has been since stuccoed, and that the new accessory structure is definitely going to match the house with the same siding.
It looks much better than vertical siding, that's for sure.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion, please?
And, Ms. Chairman, I apologize. I want to do a little housekeeping.
Thank you.
I had noted that there were no announcements for a full board, but at this point, because Mr. Reyes is not here, Mr. Simmons will be voting in his place.
Thank you. Okay, could we have a motion, please?
Yes, I'll have a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Roth.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chairman, to accept the approval of the 821 square foot attached garage at 409 Warren Street, lots 2 and 3, block 77, Sebastian Highlands, unit 02, with the condition of the planting of 8 trees and 15 foundation plantings.
Second.
I'll second.
We have a,
Mr. Kizzelbosh?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Mr. Eugen, I should have started.
Yes.
Mr. Kizzelbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg?
yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Motti?
Not present. He's not here.
No, Mr. Motti isn't present, and it'll be Mr. Simmons voting in place of Mr. Reyes.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes is not here.
Not here.
And Mr. Carter?
Yes.
That's 7 ayes. It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patient. Thank you.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
sir. Can you spell your name for me? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we will resume our discussion of item number B, or actually begin our discussion. You completed your synopsis for us? Okay. Let's start on the far end with Mr. Simmons. Do you have any questions, comments?
On the, go ahead. Okay, I have, what Dory was saying, I think is good, the idea as far as keeping it, allowing the administrative, to look into it, not just make it like 8-foot period, because sometimes, some of them, it's true, they do, because of the construction, you look in the backyard, and I've seen it, I've sold houses, and you see the backyard of the other house. And 8 foot there would be, acceptable. But sometimes they're not. They want just to build a fortress. And that, like you had that situation where you mentioned that when you go outside the house, see that huge, fence there, and it doesn't look, so I personally, 8 foot is not bad, meaning because of the circumstances being now with the height of the land for the flood, but it would be I think it should be like more at a on a one-to-one basis, when that comes into play as far as being administrative. People go out there and look, yeah, you're right, it does need it, as opposed to, oh, I want it. And because it's the law.
I'm sorry, Mr. Alvarez.
I said, because it's the law, then I can do it.
I think staff was going to set up possibly a criteria, introduce and see if you're okay with it, that for an administrative variance, if the finished floor elevation was 18 inches or 2 feet higher than the existing grade on your side property lines, because that's usually your raise because of that, septic tank and the extra fill, that you would be eligible for an 8-foot variance. Well, I mean, that would be definitely one of the criteria that we'd come up with, 18 inches, 2 feet. I don't know what you feel is, and that's mostly been what the property owners have come to say. They're one of the newer houses that is raised from the crown of the road, from the side. You've got side swales, and then a 6-foot fence. They're losing so much privacy that the extra 2 feet now gives them the privacy of a 6-foot fence. So we had thought that might be one of the criteria that you would be eligible for an administrative variance if at least the minimum you had this 2-foot difference from your side property lines and rear yard. There are areas in Sebastian that are older or hooked into sewer that won't have that 2-foot elevation difference that really, I don't know if you feel that they still would be allowed to have an 8-foot fence, or is that, now you've got more of your flat properties between neighbors, do they really need an 8-foot fence? And so that's where we thought that would maybe a condition of criteria that we would say that you'd be eligible if there was a 2-foot difference.
That's what I'm coming at, saying, well, you go over there and say, well, listen, Mr. Homeowner, you really don't, you just want to elevate it just to have like a little bit more of a fortress type of situation. But that's where I'm coming at. But if they really need it, then, because you see the other neighbor in the back, you see his door come over there, it's creepy or whatever. But
Let me ask one thing. So if we say agree to 8 feet, then number 7 would stay the same, essentially.
Number 7 in part of the code?
Except it would be changed, yeah, okay. Yeah. Number 7 on the 7-6.
Number 7 on page 7.6 was more of a definition of how we measure, where you measure the height of the fence, how you measure the height of the fence. I wasn't sure if you were all comfortable with that. Should we change that? It'd actually be more of number 1 on that same page, 7.6. That within that section, we would still leave it at 6 feet, or maybe add another section, but we would say, if you meet this criteria and this and blah, blah, then you could be granted an 8-foot administrative variance for an 8-foot fence, is where we would similarly add that. Under the height of walls and fences, there may be a subsection to that paragraph.
Okay, all right. So it wouldn't say the highest point, it would be the lowest point, basically.
Well, we'd still want to, number 7 is the definition of how it's measured, on how we determine the height of the fence. And we
Right, correct.
So that would stay the same on whether you were measuring a 6-foot or an 8-foot fence. We had just that one arrow to see if everybody was okay with that way of measuring the actual height of the fence. Where we would add the administrative variance is under that section C, on where we would put that. And now, if you do notice, there is this whole, the 2 that says exception to height regulations, and it lists all these lots and blocks. And I don't know if you picked up on it, but these are the lots and blocks that are literally adjacent to 512. And so they've already been granted this exception that says you can go 8 feet, you're along an arterial highway. So, of course, these lots are already then allowed to have the 8-foot fence. So it would probably, between those 2 sections, where we would add a possible subsection on the administrative variance.
Okay, Mr. Ross, do you have any?
Yes, I really wonder if making a change would be like opening a Pandora's box.
Right.
I just don't feel that making a change to allow 8-foot fences is the way to go. We're not really in a situation of trying to encourage a city of tall fences, and ultimately what happens is they're subject to a lot higher wind loads. They get blown over, need to be repaired. Over time, they deteriorate. Different owners may have it and not really care to keep it up. I think I wouldn't want to see a carte blanche change to 8 feet, and I think the way to do it, the way we're talking, is kind of a administrative review. I don't think that we really need to do anything beyond that, because as Mr. Alvarez said, that you know, if it's there, people will ask for it. So I think basically just stay with what we have and use the administrative process so it doesn't clutter up City Council's agenda, and I know that's an issue. You know, they have bigger things to take care of than one particular variance. And actually, I think our plan staff is much more qualified to handle something like that. They know what the circumstances are, and would take a load off of them. So I'm all in favor of making it an administrative change rather than going through the council with their Board of Appeals, or Board of Adjustment, I guess it's called. And I really don't like to see 8-foot fences. It's sending the wrong signal, I think, by having tall fences. Some cases it's necessary, I suppose, but generally speaking, I don't think they're the way to go. We're not a city trying to build tall fences and hide behind them, I don't think. So my feeling would be to go with the variance, administrative variance that you explained, Dorian. I think you've shown and certainly other staff members come along, but you've shown a great ability to be able to handle those. And that would make it a lot easier, I think, as far as, you know, making the changes in our ordinance.
I'll make some comments now and ask some questions. Dory, how many requests have they had for variances within the last?
I know we've done 3 this year. There was a couple last year. Jan King, I know when she was still here, had processed probably 3 her last year that was here too. So we've had, again, enough where we need to look at the code if you still want to keep them as regular variances and as a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. In my opinion, that's not an excessive amount. I think it's really a minimal amount. I agree with Mr. Ross. I don't like.
Comparison though, we only do about, I want to say on an average, maybe 5 variances a year. We don't do, there's not variances every city council meeting. There's probably about 5 a year. So I will say that about 60 to 70% of them have been the 8-foot fences in the last few years. Percentage-wise, if we look at it that way.
Dory, would you happen to know how many fencing permits the city gets every year?
True. Now, there's quite a bit of fence permits comparison. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my point.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of 8-foot fences. I think there are rare occasions when it might be a hardship not to have an 8-foot fence, and I would think that, in my opinion, if it isn't a hardship, a 6-foot fence, I don't know anybody who can leap over a 6-foot fence. I don't like the idea of enclosed walls. And I agree, fences, in my opinion, are problems of the future. I see it over and over again. It looks really great when it's put in, and 6 years down the road, it doesn't look so great, and 10 years down the road, it's hanging on by a thread, and the jungle is growing all over it, and nobody wants to paint it, and nobody wants to fix it, and somebody sells the house, and nobody even knows who owns it, and somebody else puts one up without a permit. I think they're real problems, but I do think that there might be a rare occasion where I can see an example for instance, in my neighborhood. The neighbor who lives in back of me is much lower than I am. And in order to keep my disgusting appearance out of his face, I wouldn't have a problem if he had a bigger fence.
Well, and I know the last one that we did too is similarly in that his house was raised. and they wanted to put the fence right on the property line. So based on our criteria for the variance, you think, okay, not to create the hardship, then move the fence closer to your house, and then you will get the privacy that you need. Then the residents are complaining, but now you've just taken my backyard, now I've got a much smaller backyard. So we have to be careful that we don't want to make it so that
I would prefer that people be encouraged to use green fences for privacy, and by that I mean nice, full trees, things like that can create visual blocks without the addition of a particularly 8-foot fence, and they are problems. It's like,
And even with the regular fence permits, though, part of the review before the permit is issued is we do have our stormwater inspector go out, especially when they are in the easement. So it's nice to say we can put a lot of trees, but if you're pushing that back towards a rear stormwater ditch and roots and all, so there's different, we do have our stormwater, but so there's so many different scenarios for each lot. And that's why we felt that was the best way to look at it as a case-by-case.
I prefer it to be looked at case by case. I don't have a problem with administrative as long as I would think that they should be granted only if there's a hardship of some sort, not caused by the person.
It's still considered a variance, and we'll have criteria to meet, not that just because you come in and pay that additional administrative fee that you're granted that variance.
Just because you want it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it.
Yeah, we're not just creating an extra step to come in, and you're guaranteed to get it. It's still considered a variance.
Also in respect to redefining the setback on the secondary front yard, I don't have a problem with that. I think that probably 10 feet is okay, but visibility, particularly on corners, is really important. I have a hard time seeing around pickup trucks, much less fences.
But see, that's where I think, the expertise of the staff looking at it could say, well, you do meet a variance because their yard or the front of their house is 10 foot further back in the example Dora used. I think that's a perfect example where we could, write all kinds of ordinances and never cover everything. So I think that's where the
secondary front yard wouldn't be a part of an administrative variance. That would just be a code change to set where a 6-foot fence could be on a secondary front yard. That would be in that one section of the code.
that would have to be a code change?
That would be part of the general code change, yes, for the walls and fences. We wouldn't make that part of the variance. We would just make that as a change to cover any lots. And if you've already got an existing fence on a corner lot, you would have to come in and revise your fence permit, but you would then be able to get that extra 10 feet. We had kind of looked at it and did some diagrams because that secondary front yard is on the other street that has driveways that are backing out. So when they back out, now they're looking at somebody's secondary front yard fence. And that's why we didn't want to get too much closer to that front yard line because they still have to back out of a driveway. So we felt 10 feet from the property line. The setback for the house itself is 20 feet on a secondary. So this is just giving them an extra 10 feet, but enough where we didn't feel that that was going to prohibit or become a visibility hazard for people backing out of their driveway on that second
That's the way
front
it's
yard.
presently set.
It's at 10, right, it's at 20 feet right now. And we have quite a bit of corner lot houses that come in, newer houses since that was changed in 99 or so, that are right at the 20-foot. So they actually lose that whole secondary front yard because there's 6-foot fence. Technically, you can put a fence all the way on your property line at 4 feet. It's where you're allowed to jump up to the 6 feet is where it's becoming prohibited for those corner lots. You can't put a 6-foot fence in your front yard, and they've got 2 front yards, and they've had to meet the setback at 20 feet, which for houses that are at 20 feet, it doesn't give them anything at all. And the older houses that were built at the 25-foot secondary front yard, they only get to go out 5 feet from that side of the house with a 6-foot fence. If you feel 10 feet to the property line is still too close on a corner lot, we can adjust it to 15, but we do get a lot of moans on the 20-foot on those corner lots.
I personally wouldn't like to see it less than the 10 feet because of the visibility issue. And I think that an awful lot of moaning comes when they knew what it was to begin with. So that's okay. Mr. Hughes? do you have some
I
comments?
just have a couple things. When you measure the 8 foot from the ground level, some yards are, like, for instance, the backyard, the back property line might be down a little bit on one corner. Where do you measure it from the high side, or you measure it from the low side?
Well, that's how that definite is, so not on either side of the fence, we're going right underneath the fence. The way it reads, it says, the height of shall be
follow the
determined from the
grade.
highest point of the ground in an
Fence
8-foot
limits, yeah.
run, lying
Okay.
directly beneath the fence or wall. So you'll take an 8-foot section of the fence and the ground right underneath of it. You take the highest point, that's where we'll measure the 6 feet.
Okay,
So that
the
if you
highest
are
point.
going, so if your fence does go down following the grade in that 8-foot run, we take the highest point and give you the benefit of that.
Okay, it's the highest point. Okay, I think, I agree with everybody down this end that I think it ought to be an individual, we look at it individually rather than make it a blanket. And I know some of the yards are pretty low, where you can see right over a 6-foot fence if you're standing on your patio. And I think that's the people that want to raise their fences up to 2 feet. So I say individually.
Same thing, yeah, I agree with that. And for secondary front yard, I think, whatever, like, again, it's to be up to administrator approval, whatever, it shouldn't come to us. And I would suggest the fence should be ending at the back corner of the house.
To remain at 20 feet then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's make it sense, instead of coming all the way to the front.
To remain at the 20 foot for the second set.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if there's,
I'm inclined to agree with everyone else so far that pointed this out. Keep the 6 feet in height and allow administrative variance. I am also in agreement of record affidavit for fences allowed on easements. I think that should be mandatory as well. As far as the height measurement determination, I think I'm happy with the way it's presently set up. And I would agree as far as the setbacks, the 20 foot as well.
we would then, well, 2 other things and one thing I forgot to totally throw out, and I had a note to ask. It had been requested from the building department because they do get a lot of questions for the applicants on fences. We currently don't have anything in the code regarding the decorative side or the good side of a fence, which side it has to face. Face outside, or does the homeowner that's paying the money for the fence get to enjoy the good side? And there's, back and forth, and that's why we wanted to bring that forth too, to see how you felt about that. In communities where you have to face the good side of the fence out, they've gotten the flack from the homeowners having to pay for that, and it was hard to enforce. And how would is that kind of hard to do in Sebastian, where we haven't had that regulation for a while, and there's a lot of fences out there, so we'd have a lot of fences grandfathered in. But they didn't know if that was something that you felt we would want to require that, so that the good side fence is out. As we were talking about the 8-foot fences and having this criteria, I started to think that maybe because it is such a large imposing fence, maybe on the 8-foot fences that would be something we would want to require, that the good side faces out, since a neighbor may have to look at an extremely tall fence on the back. So again, throwing out. And then we would like to add a paragraph that if we do go to the administrative variance, that we would state, if it's granted, that if you have an existing 6-foot fence, you could add a 2-foot panel, but it would have to match the existing fence material. And I think this would all be in that section for the administrative variance. Is that kind of where we see the ordinance?
Only for the corner lot, we could enforce that thing, the good face should be on the street side, only on the corner lot.
I disagree. I don't think we should enforce.
But it looks bad on the corner lot.
But you may have 3 sides of the fence facing in
Right.
then, and then you're saying just the secondary front yard has to
Yeah.
have so that you've
Yeah.
got one side facing out?
Yeah. Facing to the street, if it's a bad face of a fence, that won't look good,
In my experience over the years, I think that the industry standard is that the good side is out and the bad side is in, and frankly, folks, the bad side isn't bad.
Of course, it depends on what type of fence, too, that you have. If it's the PVC or the wood, the shadow box, of course, already has a good side on both sides.
Yeah.
So it is dependent on the fence itself. material.
I will say that things have changed. I know the first wooden fence when I lived in Orlando, where I'm from originally, put one in, and I had asked my contractor, I said, I think I want it to face south, I want it to look good. He says, why? He says, you're paying this money, you ought to have it looking inside, so you look at it. And he said, that's why most people do it, but I had him do it the other way. And I thought, I said, well, then I started looking, and yeah, most of them were that way. So it's my inclination, I don't think it's our place to determine that, to be honest with you.
Now, I don't know, I disagree with that. We ought to come up with something, because the building department's brought it up, that they've run into, issues with it. And
Question, more sense question. I mean, questions on it, which side, and they just felt it defined. I don't know that it is a big issue, or would we create a bigger issue if we did?
Right.
I do know a long time, when I first started, there was a neighborhood argument between neighbors about that fence going outside, inside, and she just got mad enough and painted the outside purple with white polka dots. And the city had we had nothing in the fence code that said it was wrong, and that poor neighbor was not happy. But, so I don't know if it eliminates things like that, or do we open the door for, and I don't know how to enforce the 3,000 fences that are out there already then, that have the good sites.
I think we could make it simple. For interior lot, we could leave up to the owners. Okay, for a corner lot, we could put something there.
If that's something that you would like to maybe create, start?
Are you saying that there is no code as far as good out or in?
Correct. Currently, the city code does not specify if the good side has to face out or in.
That's fine, because if I was going to put a fence up, I'd have the good side.
Facing you.
I think we have to vote on that.
And I'm just the opposite, I'd have it turned the other way.
I agree with Luis K. I've always seen, the good side outside,
I think,
that's
I
what
like what,
beautifies the property.
yeah. I think Lisa called it would be considered the Friendly Neighbor Act within our fence ordinance, if we had it facing out.
But neighbor will be happy, they'll be getting all the good side inside for them.
well, we can't really disrupt any fences that are there. They have to be
Correct, they'd be grandfathered in.
Yeah.
But I really think that at least on the street side, what we're referring to as the good side should be facing out. And, I looked at fencing at Lowe's and Home Depot, and I think the chairman said that, inside, outside, there's very little difference. I think we're making a bigger issue of it. Years ago, it used to be when they were all made out of wood and they finished the outside, but not the inside. I think most of them today are pretty good on both sides.
Okay.
It's hard to tell.
Otherwise, one of the suggestions was that if it's a fence facing a street instead of a side yard or a backyard, that would face out then, especially more on a secondary, that you may have a run of 120 feet, well, not 6 feet high, but, facing the street that may have not the good side facing out to the street. So street sense, do we want? And again, then you're having a fence, though, that has different sides on the fence. You may have
There's
two sides
different
with
types of fence.
inside, outside, and does a homeowner want that? And is this,
More aesthetic, really,
yes, and
But,
do we want to guide the aesthetics of the city, enforce that on a fence?
Part of what we're here
I get
for.
that we're doing the large garages have to meet the house, that's, we're adding that, but I don't know if we want to jump in and start requiring fences.
We asked those questions when they had a garage, is it gonna match with a house? So that's aesthetics, and that's part of what I think we're setting the tone for, because if we don't, it would be unlimited what could be done.
exactly.
And I think, what are we talking about? Basically, corner lots where, one side faces the street that they want to put it out, and perhaps a double lot where it's joined, and they want to put a fence out from the house 6, 8 feet, then the front part that faces the street should have the good,
Well, you bring up an issue,
let's call it the finish side.
if you unify and you've got another 80 feet on a double lot, you could have
Yeah.
a 90-foot fence on your front yard facing, so,
Well, like the one, case in point now on Barber Street, some gentleman there, the one on, a beautiful fence, I think, who had that house, There was a builder, I can't remember, but the guy did a nice, beautiful fence in the back on Barber, right before, where you had that, 70 Power Line Road or 77th Avenue, right there in the corner. That's a really pretty fence.
The problem I see with turning fences around is the homeowner that's building the fence is gonna pay a lot of money for that fence. Now, I'm talking about wooden fences, not the vinyl ones. The homeowner's gonna pay a lot of money for that fence, and the good side's gonna be, his neighbor's gonna get all the good side to look at, and he's gonna be stuck with the posts and the, so
Well, that's why maybe we were just considering on the corner lots, only the side of that fence that was facing the street.
I have no problem with the corner lots.
But I'm not sure if that, that's when I was saying you've got three sides, one side facing you and a different.
It's kind of what people get used to, what they get accustomed to. I came from a place where, 50 years ago, the rule was if you put a fence up, the finished side is on the outside, the other side is on the inside. That's what everybody was used to, and it didn't cause any problems. It goes back to that good fences make good neighbors. And
Very important.
ugly fences make ugly neighbors. So I don't think it's a problem to do it, and yes, it costs a lot of money, but how selfish can we get?
And I apologize, I was trying to get a consensus of the comments, but I haven't done this one. I got a consensus on the administrative variance for the height, but on this one, is there a consensus?
I say we leave it up to the homeowners, except maybe on the corner lots. Face it out.
Yeah.
So require that.
I could go with that.
The corner lot on a street side fence, corner lot should face, be outside, okay.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're talking about. We can call it the finished side out.
Finished side.
Correct.
Not good. That's right away setting up a flag.
And I wasn't sure the consensus on the revising the corner lot on where that 6-foot fence could start. At the current setback of 20 feet, or to allow them an additional 10 feet?
I think safety says that, the 20 feet. Closer than
Because
that, we
that's
start.
their property and they have to mow it, if they put a fence, they have to mow in the back, inside. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still, homeowner still has the right to still apply for relief from that code
Correct.
through a variance, again, with
Correct.
that, but this, we don't want to change that, leave that as the same.
But I think we should limit up to the back corner of the house, should not bring up to the front of the house. On the side corner.
Well, currently, we're using 20 feet, so if you're a house that's at 25 or 30, yes, then you still can go to that 20-foot line.
Okay.
Otherwise, now we're making it even more if we keep it with the corner of the house. If you're at one of the older houses at 25 feet with the old setback. The current setback is 20 feet, so we've just kept it at the 20 feet.
I'd say keep it at the 20.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's really a plus for people who like to have fences, because all of the new subdivisions do not allow fences. So.
Correct.
Yeah, they allow 4-foot chain link fence for the dog, for
Maybe.
that thing. That's the only thing, yeah, for the pets.
Okay, I think I've gotten some direction on what your concerns are, and the ordinance will come to you then on the 18th. We'll have a meeting. I'm not sure there'll be other items on that agenda, but thank you, you've given me direction.
Point of clarification, are we going to allow people to add 2 feet on the top of a 6-foot fence?
So I think, so if you've got an existing 6 feet, and maybe because at the time you didn't have money for the variance, or you were shy about doing that if you did want to come in and you did, again, there'll be some minimum requirements that you have to at least be 2 feet from your elevation of your finished floor. We'll come up with some other scenarios that may meet that. If they did come in for an administrative variance and staff visited the site and we felt they should be granted the variance, I think that would be fair to allow them, instead of having to take down their whole 6-foot fence and come up with that financial burden, that they could add 6 feet, and we'll include some sort of clause that it would have to match the existing fence. And maybe it's a wooden fence and you add some sort of trellis top, but you would have to get a permit for it, and it would have to be compatible with the existing fence. That's.
Dory, you haven't let us down. Your tastes are very good that way, and we hope that 20 years from now, your predecessor will think the same way.
And I hope I'm not here
Yeah,
to
we hope
see
you're
it.
not retiring anytime soon.
Okay. Thank you. You have your running orders.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioner Matters.
Yes, I have a question. For some time on Indian River Boulevard, besides the normal speed bumps that are there, you see every so often there's part of the road's been cut out, and it's just, you know,
There's
what's happening with that? And why is it taking so long if there's doing something with it?
I believe they've awarded the bid. That should be starting soon. They were hoping to get Indian River Drive. You'll see some activity shortly because they're hoping to get it done before the clam bake. But they are doing a new resurfacing project for Indian River Drive that's in our city limits, and part of that also with new crosswalks with, I believe it's going to be the
Pavers?
stamped concrete
Okay.
pavers, yes, the pavers.
That's
Yes.
where the sections that are
Yes.
dug out to be?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think there was some working with the bid, but they're hoping to get it, you should see some activity starting soon. Clam bake's in a month, they're hoping to get it done before that.
If it's in a month.
At least the pavers are, I mean, the asphalt, I believe, at least down in that area. At least that side, that end.
Done? Done?
Thank you,
Nothing for me.
Status of the old railroad station that was brought in. I haven't seen any progress on that and haven't heard anything from any proposed building plans or anything. And I know it was granted a temporary situation, but and I like everything that's going on, but I'm just, concerned.
The property owner, he just finished up, he did hook into sewer, and the lift station and configuration, that had taken some money, they had to do based on the size that they needed. He did get a grant, but he's been working on that, and Mr. Haynes was in just a couple of weeks ago and said they exactly come in with what they're going to do with the house that's there, and they're getting ready to jump into that project. So it should be beginning soon. Site plan is good for a year. He's not close to that year yet, and then they can extend it. So I checked with the building official, and he's okay with what they have for the train station regarding the tie downs and everything. But it does appear that it should start soon. He was finishing up a sewer connection.
Probably move it up here to the railroad station, because Brightline is coming up here, you know that. No, seriously, I just I looked at a property near the line, and they're starting to clear land that belongs to East Coast, Florida East Coast. They're starting it's coming.
They're building a station?
Yeah, the
You
railroad.
think they're gonna build a station?
Well, they were thinking about building another one either in Fort Pierce or somewhere around here, so that way it won't go directly from West Palm to Orlando. And that way satisfy some people here in the Treasure Coast. That's what I heard. So probably they're looking at Fort Pierce.
Probably, yeah, we don't have enough land along here because
I was saying, I was just a joke, but maybe get that, put it out here where it was originally, and there we go. We got a station here in Sebastian. Oh, gosh, but no,
So following up on that, has there been no communication with the city regards anything on
I believe if there was
requesting
going to be communication to go through the city manager's office, so I don't want to say or speak of anything because I don't know anything anew. The only I can tell you is we had to do some searching through St. John's, the website for some permits, and there was I did notice there was a permit for Brightline for something, for laying cable or something, and so I'm not sure how that even connected with St. John's, and that's all I can tell you that I've seen through our department. But I don't believe we've been contacted for a station or any additional activity from Brightline.
They're operating under secrecy?
But I can't speak again, it would be going through the city manager's office.
Now they're going to Las Vegas.
Anything about the railroad bridge across the inlet?
Nothing that's come through our office, Mr. Roth, that I can give you some actual facts on.
I'm just curious.
that I know.
I mean, you probably would hear before I would or any of us would. I have kind of an issue that, and I keep seeing it, all these septics. And we granted a new building model over on Barber Street, way over by the signal light there at Schumann, with a septic tank. Are we still going forward with permitting houses with septic tanks?
Yes, until there are sewer lines that they can hook into. And it would be a matter of working with the county. They would have to, whether they did it in blocks or all of Sebastian, but, you know, each individual homeowner would be assessed for their property, what the line just to go in front of their house would be. And I know that can be, it's going to be costly to put the sewer lines in, but at this time, certainly in the areas where there are sewer lines, you are required to hook into that sewer line. But we can't force anybody to put a private lift station on. But they're in that particular model home, there's no sewer available in that area.
I know, and it's just a question that bothers me that there's nothing being done with long-term for adding additional sewer lines.
Well, I know Ms. Fraser has done a lot of grant work to get sewer lines in, and I know that Mr. Schulke for Indian River County Utilities had done an assessment of the Indian River County areas that they kind of rank which areas would be first and better for sewer lines, which is usually near your water, your St. Sebastian River and the lagoon. So I know that studies have been done, and I know Ms. Fraser would love to have the time, and she's making herself find those grants when they come available to certainly look into some of the city areas to get sewer in them. So it's not that nothing that we're not doing anything on. It is a priority, I'd say in the top 5 to get sewer into the city.
This will cost more money than Trump claims to have. I want you to know that.
But we'll certainly look at the avenues for grants to get started.
Yep.
Yeah, I served on a plan commission in northern Indiana for 9 years, and Indiana would not allow expansion if it did not have city water and sewer and be annexed into the city. And it worked. Either they did it or they didn't, and they had to come up with the funds to expand. And,
Mr.
and here
Roth,
we don't.
No, we do.
Yes. So
All of the new subdivisions get served by sewer. These are existing lots, so this is not expansion. This is what's already here.
Yeah, so you'll see
If
the
it's a new subdivision, it has sewer.
the Spirit of Sebastian that was recently annexed in. They will have to provide water and sewer for those new homes. Sandcrest had to put in
Okay,
a sewer. A
I
septic
stand
sewer
corrected.
I have one question. My turn or not, at any rate. It's been a while. What's on the back burner?
We had quite a bit of applications come in the spring, in April and May, and we're working through those. When we've sent off some comments, the projects most of them have gone on hold at their own accord or things that they're working out. So again, I'm waiting for those revisions to come in, and I have a feeling that we're going to have a couple of months of back-to-back meetings, or at least meetings a month where we will have 2 or 3 site plans on those meetings. So we're still working through those projects. Nothing ready to come before you yet.
Thank you.
I have one here. I saw this, we got this today, the
Yes.
Sebastian Community Redevelopment Agency. I was gonna touch on that, because remember I had a presentation a couple of months ago on that gentleman that came and about the downtown revitalization project, or?
Yes.
Have we made any progress on that?
Well, and that's under, if we can jump into staff matters, that was the first on there. This is the completed market assessment. Which they have finished, and this is the final version of this. We wanted to give you all a copy. This is their marketability and their business kind of document for our riverfront. They have finalized their draft of the master CRA plan. And they are setting up a meeting with staff for us to go over this final draft. And after the tweaks, it will come before you. So we are very close to bringing that before you for your comments on that document. And this document was used as consideration for that master plan. But yes, they are still working on it, and that should come before you. I don't want to necessarily finite it before the end of the year, but the final draft on the master CRA is being done and worked on. We also wanted to let you know on September 12th that the vacation rental ordinance was approved. We have had some calls on that already. We are very close to, we are just waiting for one, the life safety permit checklist that the building department is completing, and we will have that packet ready. As we see the process, as it's happening, if you have any questions on it, send the vacation rental owners to community development. We are going to hand them out this packet that has different documents and the checklists on them. They'll be required to fill that out, give us the information. They need to register with the state if they are renting out their own home. As we understand it, if you are living in the house and just renting out a room, you do not have to register with the state as a vacation rental. But if you're renting out your own home, and then they also have to create an account with the clerk of court to collect the tourist tax. Once you get that done, you'll come back to the city, you'll work with the building department to get your business tax receipt, and they'll do a life safety check on the vacation rental. And you will get those permits, and you'll be registered with the city then as a vacation rental. The approval allowed them to come, you have until December 31st, to the end of the year, to get registered with the city with that process. After that, then, once we start receiving complaints, or if we are aware that you're a vacation rental, we'll work with you, but if you're getting complaints, we can take you at that point, use the code enforcement, possibly take you before special magistrate. But that process is in place and the ordinance has been adopted. Also, we just wanted to, staff has kind of made a determination, an interpretation of a code, and we just wanted to let you know how we were interpreting and forwarding the information out into the business community if it comes up. A question came up for some of the businesses, the retail businesses that set tables outside of their front door and their items and then bring them in at night. And weren't sure if that should be considered outside display, outside storage, or if we just consider it kind of a sidewalk sale type of during the day. In the riverfront overlay and the 512 overlay, any of the overlays, outside display has to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is why the golf cart had to come before you for him to be able to display that out there. And that was we consider that outside display. If you're going to set a bunch of tires outside permanently or something like that. Based on a definition that we had in the code about outdoor storage, it stated that the keeping in an unroofed area of any goods, materials, or merchandise in the same place for more than 24 hours was considered outdoor storage. And so staff would like to use our interpretation of that, yes, if you're permanently going to have something outside that's not covered from an overhang or on a sidewalk, that more of a permanent display or a display that's closer to the road would have to come before you to get approval in the riverfront overlay, or in the overlay districts. If it's just a retail business setting some items on a table by the door, as long as the sidewalk isn't impeded and still passable, we are okay with that and are not considering that formal outdoor display. And as long as it doesn't go
Have we had a problem with that somewhere, or?
Pardon me?
Have we had a problem with that somewhere, or is that?
We've had some of the thrift stores, or some, like I say, some of the retail stores had set stuff out, and code enforcement had stopped them to tell them that they bring it in. And so we had some calls to the office to get a clarification on if it was allowable.
Okay.
And so we just wanted to pass on to you on how we've interpreted it, because some of the outside displays do come before the board for your permission. And that's how we felt. It was, as long as they brought it in at the end of the day and it was, again, the sidewalk was still passable, we felt that was okay. Unless you would like us to interpret it a different way or feel that that's not a good interpretation.
As long as you put it in at the end of the day, I mean.
Which the golf carts do too, it's just that they're uncovered based on this definition, and they're more closer to the road in a visible area. Okay, and that's all staff has tonight.
Do we have any attorneys' matters?
Nothing from me. No.
Thank you. No other business? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.